Chapter 3 Aboard the USS Pathfinder en route to Earth. All the soldiers were again gathered around the conference room table, and Ryder projected images on the screen. As you can see from the satellite images, the small ship orbited the Earth twice and then headed directly for Atlanta. The ship used some cloaking devices, but we were still able to track it to its location. The next picture appeared on the screen. It was a large octagon-shaped stadium. As the picture zoomed in, the stadium looked like it was in ruins from the previous riots. Ryder continued, "This was the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It was built in 2017 as a football stadium for the National Football League's Atlanta Falcons." Ryder paused for a minute for recognition. Most of the soldiers sitting in front of him probably never heard of the NFL. In the 2140s, when the earth was wrecked with hurricanes, tornadoes, and extreme climate changes, most of the pro sports in America and around the world were abandoned. Families and cities needed to focus on survival rather than recreation. Ryder remembered as a child watching football on the television and even throwing the football around with his father, but those times were long gone. This stadium was once one of the greatest ones in history when it was built. The intricate collapsible roof system was a one-of-a-kind invention. It was originally thought by the UGMSC that the stadium was abandoned a long time ago when the population moved underground to New Atlanta. However, now that a ship landed inside the stadium, our satellites discovered activity at this location. We were able to acquire the plans for the building, and it appears there's a complex underground system below the stadium. It is believed that this is the main outpost of the EOA. The problem is that they probably know that we are coming, as they didn't hide the fact that the ship landed in the center of the old football field. Ryder changed the screen again and continued, "There is a back entrance, as you can see here," pointing to a set of steel doors at the bottom of a paved ramp. "The plan is to have Tracker come in for a hot landing right near the ramp. He will use a guided missile to blow through the steel doors, then we will all jump out and hit the ground running. While we are attacking from the side, Tracker will drop some bombs in the center field to eliminate the escape ship and any other enemies in the area." Looking at a stocky, dark-skinned man with a rough beard, Ryder said, "Bullet, you will take lead. Get us through the doors and eliminate anyone you see. The goal is to work our way to the center offices located here." Ryder switched to a new picture of a blueprint showing the layout of the underground facility. "As you can see, there is a hallway that leads from the back door. We will enter to these offices. Baccaro and Brown, you will follow Bullet and eliminate any more combatants. Jewel, you and Bites will stay back, and when they find the computers, you will hack in and grab as much intel as you can. If we find Ryan, I want him alive." Bites looked up from his handheld device with a frown. "Major, do we have any more intel on how many enemies are at this location? What about heat levels?" "Bites, sorry to say this is all we've got. The satellites haven't picked up much movement from outside the location since the ship landed, so it appears as if they are all still there." The heat levels Bites was referring to were the levels of electrical, radio, and temperature changes within the structure. This information would help Bites determine where the central processing unit was for the group. "Other than that, we don't have much else to go on. We are not going in blind, just a bit limited." Ryder heard quiet grumbling from the group. This was expected. They just didn't have much information, and that made them anxious, which came through as complaints. As much as Ryder told his superiors about the need for better intelligence, they just seemed to be giving him less and less. This made these missions all the more dangerous. This mission was definitely one with almost no intel and very short planning. Ryder hated to ask, but he did anyways. "Are there any questions?" He looked at each one of them. Bullet was scratching his beard, contemplating things, but clearly ready to attack. The Bees twins, as they were known, Baccaro and Brown, were wiping their assault rifles down, checking each screw and surface to ensure perfection. Jewel was staring directly into Ryder's eyes, wanting to ask a question, but knowing it wasn't the right time. Bites, still pinned to his handheld, looked up, but then went right back to the device. Another moment or two, Ryder shut off the projector and returned the drive to his pocket. Well, then, I suggest everyone get some shut-eye, Ryder stated. We will reconvene at 0800 hours to go over last-minute details, and then we'll have to strap in for the descent to the attack. Dismissed. Everyone got up and floated away to find some food or a quiet place to prep before the next meeting. Ryder nodded to Jewel, who was staring at him, and beckoned her to his cabin. He entered his cabin and sat down at the small desk before he heard the inevitable knock at the door. Enter, he said. Jewel entered and took a seat next to Ryder. She looked directly at him. Ryder put his hand up and said, Before you ask, Jewel, I don't know if this is the main outpost. She glared at him. Then she spoke with a quiet, determined voice. Major, you promised me that I would have a chance to avenge my parents. I have done everything you have asked, and still I haven't had the opportunity to face them. Ryder took a moment and let her relax a little, which she did, as she always did in these discussions before the battle. Katie, I know the promise I made you. I am also looking for vengeance for the death of my only daughter. We will have the chance for this. It will just take time. This is one of the best leads, and hopefully, with Bite's help, we can find them and end this. It is more than just killing a few of them. We have to seek out the whole organization and stop it before all of humanity is lost. More than anything, we must stay focused. Too much anger, and we will make mistakes. She nodded and went quiet, looking down at her clenched fists. She breathed slowly, her hands relaxed, and she laid her palms on the table. Jewel, Ryder started again slowly, you have done some incredible things over the past 5 years. You have proven yourself over and over again. We will find the answers you seek. We must. Now go and get some rest. We are all going to need it once the attack commences. She got up slowly from her seat and floated to the door. She turned before leaving with tears in her eyes. I trust you, Major. Then she exited the door and closed it behind her. Jewel was so young and angry, he thought. He was like her when he first found out that Sarah's death wasn't an accidental debris storm, as it was reported to the public, but a deliberate attack by the EOA. He still remembered the day he found out and unconsciously gripped the side of the table while remembering. Commander Gerald brought the young Captain Ryder into his office in the Egg. This was one of the geosynchronous space stations orbiting the Earth. It was called the Egg due to its white orb-like shape. Sit, Captain, Smith said. Ryder compiled and sat at the large table, looking out onto the blue Earth below. Ryder, Smith said, I have some information for you concerning Sarah's death. I thought about keeping this from you, but you have done so much for our human race, and I didn't want you to learn this one day from someone else. Ryder looked at him with inquisitive eyes. Sir, what do you mean? She was killed by a debris storm. Actually, Ryder, we have collected new evidence that shows that the debris were jettisoned from an EOA ship. The goal, of course, was to destroy the Voyager before it left for spare air. Rising to his feet, Ryder looked at Gerald and yelled, What the hell? Are you telling me that the EOA killed my daughter? Soldier, calm down, Gerald said, touching Ryder's arm and helping him back to his seat. Then, passing the device over, he went through the images showing the ship as it released the debris. Ryder kept himself quiet during the whole discussion, but from that moment on, he knew that he would have to destroy the EOA. He would make them pay for taking his only daughter. The anger in him fumed beyond limits, just like the look he saw in Jewel's eyes a few years ago. Ryder returned to the present and unclenched his hands. He still experienced flashes of anger like he felt when Gerald first told him the news. However, he had learned to control them and just focus on the missions. But this mission might be it. This one might lead to the end and the retribution he needed for Jewel, himself, and Cooper. He never told Cooper the truth. There just wasn't a need for sharing this information in the short time they had together on Earth and the Moon, and he wasn't sure if he would ever confide in him the truth of his mom's death. He looked over the plans again on his handheld, running through all the scenarios in his head. I just wish we had more time to plan, Ryder thought. It was then that he realized how tired he was. He still hadn't slept a full night since before the attack on the moon base. Ryder closed the files and went to the small bathroom to clean up. Before lying down, he sent a quick message to Tracker to check in. Tracker responded that all was well and he was going to get a few hours of shut-eye before they reached Earth's atmosphere. He promised to wake Ryder before that time. Ryder signed off and lay down on his bed. In a moment, he was fast asleep. Chapter 4, USS Gemini. Cooper woke up to the announcement that they were in the deceleration phase of the trip. He decided it would be a good idea to get some breakfast before they arrived. He scrolled through a menu and noticed pancakes were an option. This made him pause for a moment, thinking of his times with Ryder. Instead, though, he chose a breakfast sandwich and some juice. He pushed the button and floated back to the cabinet, too, to pick it up. He noticed that Rick was now sound asleep and snoring away. He floated back to his seat with the food and ate it quickly. There wasn't much else to do until they landed. He scrolled through some information on his handheld, but his thoughts of working on spaceships occupied his mind. A little while later, the captain announced that they were arriving soon. He looked forward to meeting First Sergeant Bolts, since reading about him in the files Ryder shared with him back on the moon. The docking procedure went smoothly, and as soon as they locked in, Cooper thought he would feel the weight of gravity. But then he remembered the pictures he looked at of the space station. The Gemini consisted of two big rings spinning slowly around the central axis. The spaceport was at the bottom of the axis where there was no gravity. The spaceship's rings turned slowly, giving a feeling of gravity comparable to the moon. Humans learned that it was just easier to live with some gravity. He unbuckled from his seat and floated out toward the door. He looked like he was the last to leave, and he was happy not to have to talk to Rick again. As he moved through the door, he noticed his bag waiting for him. He swung it up on his back and headed out. His orders only took him this far, so hopefully someone was there to meet him. As he entered the terminal area, he noticed a soldier floating near the door holding a sign that said Richardson. Cooper approached him, stopped, stood at attention, and said, "Private First Class Richardson, reporting for duty, Specialist." The soldier chuckled a little, moved the sign, held out his hand, and said, "Richardson, nice to meet you. I'm Specialist Daniels, but you can just call me Daniels." They shook hands for a moment. Maybe this won't be so bad, Cooper thought. Then Daniels turned and beckoned Cooper to follow. As they floated down the hallway, Daniels started peppering him with questions. "So, leadership award. I didn't realize I was in the presence of royalty." He chuckled when he said this. "I hated basic training. Do they still force you to drive across the moon craters?" "Yeah, basic training was rough. They did have us go through the moon craters, which was wild for me since I grew up on Earth." "Earth? Really?" Daniels turned back and looked at him. "Richardson, that's crazy. For me, I've spent all my life in space, and I prefer the walls and corridors of a space station or a ship to anything else. I don't think I could live in the open, but I guess you spent most of your time underground in the cities anyways." Cooper decided it was best not to get into all the freelancing stories too early, so he decided to ask his own questions. "Yeah, so Daniels, what do you do?" Daniels thought for a moment as they continued floating down the hallway. "Well, my main job is to monitor the progress of the ships we are working on. But it is so much more than that. I have to make sure we have the parts for repairing them, and it means going on trips to get the parts, sometimes as far as the moon. I have been working here for about 3 years." "So, what do you think of First Sergeant Bolts?" Cooper asked cautiously. "Oh, man, you don't have to worry about him. He has a temper sometimes when we fall behind on a project, but he's sort of like a big teddy bear. But don't ever don't ever tell him I said that," Daniel said, stopping for a moment and grinning at Cooper. He continued, "He gives off this perception of being a hard ass, but in reality, if you do your job and you do it well, he won't have any complaints." They turned down another corridor and came to a crossroads. Daniels explained they were at a point where they could enter the rings and gravity would return. He warned Cooper to be careful as he made the transition. As Cooper went through the door and crossed through a space, he felt the gravity return to his body. His bag once again had weight. Not much, but a little. "The gravity is about the same as on the moon. The designers thought it would be good to have some gravity so we would know up from down," Daniels said. Led the way to the set of metal doors that were labeled Motor Pool. Before they entered, Daniels pointed to the sign. "You know, every time I see this sign, I have to laugh. It's not really the motor pool. I mean, we don't have automobiles here. This is where we fix spaceships. But, you know, the military traditions don't change. So even though we are in space, this is what they call it." Daniels pushed open the door, and the din of activity hit Cooper right away. People were scrambling all over the place, but the thing he noticed right away was the immense size of the room. Because of the enormity of the room, he could see the curvature of the floor as it went up the inside of the ring. He stopped to look through a small window with a view of space. He could see that the rings were turning about the rest of the space station, but it was a slow movement. Daniels gave him a moment to adjust and then spoke loudly so he could be heard over all the work. "Welcome to the motor pool. Follow me and I will take you to the office where First Sergeant Bolts works." He led Cooper around the side of the motor pool near the wall where he was looking out into space. He was amazed at all the different ships. Some of them were much bigger than the supply ship that was attacked in the moon base port. There was even one that was no bigger than the rover he rode in during the final mission in Basic on the moon. A few of the mechanics looked up from their work and waved to Daniels, but most of them were focused on what they were doing, whether it be welding metal or turning bolts with an electronic socket tool. Daniels led Cooper up some stairs, which were pretty easy at the low gravity levels, and they entered a white office area with windows on all sides. As they entered, Cooper recognized First Sergeant Bolts at once from the picture that Ryder showed him back on the moon. Daniels pointed Cooper to Bolts and then headed the other way. "Thanks, Daniels," Cooper said as Daniel walked away. Daniels gave a quick wave and then went into his office. Cooper dropped his bag and approached Bolts. Coming to attention, he said, "First Sergeant Bolts, Private First Class Richardson, reporting for duty." "At ease, Richardson," Bolts said, taking his unsmoked cigar he was chewing on from his mouth and holding out his hand to Cooper. Cooper took his hand and shook it. "Grab a seat and let's chat," Bolts said, gesturing to a chair next to the desk. Cooper took the chair and moved it so that he could see Bolts. Sergeant Bolts was pretty much how he looked in the picture from Ryder's files. From his record, Cooper knew he had an average height about 5 feet 10 inches tall, but he probably weighed more than 250 pounds. He didn't look fat, so to speak, but he was a big man. He was balding, but had white curly hair around his ears and the back of his head. "So, how is my old friend Ryder? I bet you were surprised to find out he was your grandfather." Cooper was surprised by the direct approach Bolts was taking. Ryder must have talked to him before he arrived. "Ryder is doing well, and yes, I was surprised to find out he was my grandfather. We were having a good time together on the moon until the bomb struck." "Yes, Cooper, I heard about that. It sounds like Ryder is going to retaliate, though. I definitely wouldn't want Ryder on my bad side," Bolts said, and then broke into a huge, jolly laugh that caused him to shake all over and make the desk tremble as well. When he recovered, he put the cigar back in his mouth and said, "Now, Richardson, let's talk about you. From your orders, it looks like you have some experience with mechanical repairs already, and you have put in several hours already in a spacesuit, which is great. You need to be ready, though, as you are going to work. I understand you are leaving on the Mayflower whenever it takes off. Until then, I have to teach you everything you need to know to repair anything that goes wrong on that mission. The military gave us both a big challenge here. I know you were the Leadership Award winner, and they were obligated to grant you your first choice. However, you will probably be one of the youngest and greenest soldiers on the Mayflower. In fact, because of my seniority, I could have denied your first choice, and you would get other orders." Bolts looked up at Cooper, pausing for the effect of that statement. Cooper wasn't sure how to react, so he just stared back. "But," Bolt continued, looking at his handheld, "Ryder and I considered the recommendations of your drill sergeant. I see something in you, and I like it. I wanted to meet you and get to know you." Leaning in closer, Bolt said, "You probably don't know this, but I trained your mom, Sarah, as well. She was one of my best students I ever taught, and when she died, it was a huge loss to the interstellar program. Even with all that in mind, I am still wary of taking you, but I figured I would give it a shot if I could meet you first." Bolts paused for a minute and then said, "So I have a question for you. Are you ready to work?" Bolts said while looking directly into Cooper's eyes. Cooper was surprised by the directness of Bolts. He didn't realize that Bolts was taking a chance on him. He worried a little bit about the pressure, but he knew what he wanted to do and was ready for it. He looked directly into Bolts' eyes and said, "First Sergeant Bolts, I chose astromechanical engineering to follow in my mom's footsteps. I am ready to learn from you, and I'm excited for the opportunity. I plan on getting on the Mayflower and going to Sperrier, where I was supposed to go on the Voyager with my family so many years ago." Bolts looked directly at him for a minute or two. Your response reminded me so much of Sarah. You realize, of course, that you have her eyes. He paused again, chewing on the cigar protruding from the side of his mouth. Then, leaning back, he said, Well, Richardson, welcome to the motor pool. And then he broke into laughter again and slapped Cooper on the back. The laughter turned into a cough, and then Bolts hacked up a little for a moment and spat it in the trash can to the side. Wiping his face, he put his cigar back in his mouth and looked to the right. He yelled, Daniels! Daniels poked his head out of the office and nodded to Bolts. Daniels, take Richardson down to supply and get him the required uniform and supplies. Then run him over to the barracks and get him a bunk. After that, I don't expect to see you back here. Have a good evening. Thanks, Bolts. Will do. Turning to Cooper, he said, Let's go, Richardson. Cooper thanked Sergeant Bolts, gathered his bags, and prepared to leave. As he turned around, he bumped right into another soldier coming in the door. Cooper looked up and directly into the eyes of a female soldier. Hey, careful there, Private, she said with a smile on her face. She was carrying a coffee cup, but her quick thinking kept it from spilling all over Cooper. I'm so sorry, Specialist Johnson, Cooper said, looking at her name and her uniform. Eyes up here, Richardson, she said, pointing at her eyes, knowing full well he was just reading her name and not leering at her chest. Cooper's shyness caused him to stumble through an apology, trying to explain he was just looking at her name tag and not at her chest. She giggled loudly, slugged him on the shoulder, and said, I know, Richardson, I was just messing with you. Damn, you are green, aren't you? Bolts said you were green, but I had no idea. She said this with a sly smile, and slugging him again, she skirted past him and headed over to her desk, which was just behind Bolts. Cooper couldn't help but eye her as she moved past him. He caught the eyes of Bolts, but Bolts just looked back and started laughing again. Cooper started to stare open-mouthed until Daniels slapped him on the shoulder and gave him a nudge. They didn't talk at all until they were out of the motor pool doors and it was quiet again. Then Daniels turned to him as they walked side by side and said, Well, looks like you passed the first test with Bolts. You survived his big question. Don't worry, he asked that of everyone who serves under him. I have seen him throw a soldier out on his butt when he didn't like the answer. Well, that's good, I guess. Cooper's mind was wandering, though. There was something about the woman he just met that he couldn't forget. Her eyes were so pretty, and the way she looked at him made his legs go to jelly. He always had problems talking to women, dating back to his time on Earth. He just couldn't speak around them, especially beautiful women. Thinking back, he didn't know if he found Specialist Johnson beautiful, but he loved her sense of humor and the way she teased him. He decided to take a risk and ask about her. So, Daniels, who is that woman? Who, Johnson? Oh, yeah, she teases everybody. Matter of fact, you'll be working with her a lot. She is also an astromechanical engineer, just like you. She has been here since before I arrived. Why do you ask? I don't know. I was just wondering, Cooper said, stumbling over his words again. He hoped he wasn't being too obvious. Why? Do you like her? Daniel said, laughing and slapping him on the back. Man, I would consider her off limits. I mean, she isn't dating anyone, and she's probably only a couple of years older than you. But get this, Daniel leaned in close. She is Bolt's granddaughter. Then he burst into laughter and slapped Cooper even harder on the back. Cooper groaned a little. It wasn't so much from the fact that she was Bolt's granddaughter, but the fact that he would be working with her. He had never worked for anyone, much less a woman. Back on Earth as a freelancer, he was on his own, and his dad let him come and go as he pleased. The first time he took any orders, was in basic training. I guess I will need to learn how to talk to women, or else I'll be in a lot of trouble, Cooper thought. Daniel's laugh subsided as they reached another set of doors labeled Quartermaster. He opened the door and Cooper's entered. He gestured to Cooper to wait, then Daniels headed up to the desk. He reached the counter and shook hands with the man behind it. They talked quietly, and the guy peered around the side of Daniels and looked at Cooper for a minute. They chatted a little more and then shook hands again. Richardson, front and center, soldier. The guy turned and gestured for Cooper to come. As Cooper passed Daniels took his bag and walked toward a few plastic chairs in the corner. Richardson, I'll be here when you finish. Shouldn't be too long, Daniels said, pulling out his handheld and going to work. Cooper followed the guy into the back. At the first stop, the sergeant grabbed a big blue bag and handed it to Cooper. Richardson, my name is Sergeant Black. Keep this bag open and I will load it as we go. As they walked, Sergeant Black stopped at different tables and chose materials to put in the Cooper's bag. As they continued, Black talked. You know, normally if you get assigned to a unit here in Gemini, you have to wait until we do this as a group. Usually it takes about a week before you can get your supplies, but since you will be working directly for Bolts, I am happy to make an exception. Have you met him yet? Cooper responded. Yes, I just came from the motor pool, Sergeant. Black smiled. Quite a character, huh? Cooper smiled back. Yes, he had a great laugh. They continued through the tables, and when they reached the end, the bag was so full that Cooper had to waddle back to the front. When they got there, Cooper set the bag down for a minute and then turned back to Black. Okay, Black said. He grabbed a handheld device from the table and swiped through a few screens. Turning the screen towards Cooper, he said, Here's a list of the supplies that you are taking. These are what you need to be for an astromechanical engineering training. If you could just sign here at the bottom, then we'll be out of here. Cooper looked at the screen, but the list was so long, and he wasn't paying attention when Sergeant Black threw items into his bag. He assumed it was correct and didn't want to offend anyone by asking. He reached out and signed with his finger and hit the accept button. Then, looking up, he thanked Sergeant Black for allowing him the opportunity to pick up the supplies early. Daniels shook Black's hand again and escorted Cooper out the door. They turned to the right and continued down a corridor. So it seems Sergeant Bolts can get anything done, Cooper commented to Daniels. Since I have been here, Daniels started, it has been surprising to me how quickly things happen when you mention that is for First Sergeant Bolts. I suppose when you have been here on the space station for over 20 years, you establish yourself as the man, so to speak. Then, leaning in low, Daniels whispered, and you know, he single-handedly killed 3 EOA terrorists. He strangled one of them with his bare hands, and the other 2 he stuffed in an incinerator and burned them alive. Whoa, Cooper said with his wide eyes, trying to act as surprised as possible, even though he knew it wasn't true. Ryder let him read the report back on the moon, and while there were 3 terrorists killed, Bolts trapped them in an airlock, but it was the terrorists who decided to open the airlock and expose themselves to space and a quick death. Cooper assumed that, like any rumor, the story grew over time, and now it made Bolts look like some sort of superhero. Well, Cooper wasn't going to argue the facts, as Daniel probably wouldn't believe him anyways, so he just feigned shock and awe. Are you telling me he killed them all by himself? That is the way this story goes, replied Daniels. I mean, it's probably a little bit exaggerated, but I know that he is good friends with Major Ryder and played a part in several terrorist situations. Cooper thought about telling Daniels his relationship with Ryder, but decided it might be best just to keep that to himself for now. He didn't want to deal with the whole range of questions that would follow his announcement. After switching between a couple of hallways, they reached another set of doors labeled residences. Even though the gravity was low, the bag that Cooper was carrying was bulky and started to tire him. Daniels handed Cooper a key card and then used his own card to open the door. He showed Cooper where the pad was and then said, These are the barracks. The key code I gave you will get you through the door. You will also use it for the chow hall and your own room. After I go through the door and it closes, use the key to enter as well. Then Daniels proceeded through the door and it closed behind him. Cooper looked down and found the keypad. He used it to open the door. As he came through the door, it closed behind him. He detected a slight odor of food cooking but couldn't recognize it. Daniels sniffed as well. It smells like pizza tonight for dinner in the chow hall. You have been assigned to the single enlisted barracks, which are just down the way here. The chow hall is at the end of the hallway. When you are ready for dinner, just use your key card to account for your meal. They walked for a little bit, then Daniel said, I don't live on this floor. I am married, so I have married accommodations, which are on the next floor up. We all still use the same chow hall, though, since it is easier to feed everyone at once. The mess hall opens at 1800 hours and will close at 2000 hours. The lines usually form around 1730, but if you come around 1900, you can walk right up. Here it is, said Daniel, pointing to a door labeled Enlisted Barracks. Daniel showed Cooper where to insert his key card, then he proceeded in, holding the door. Looking at his handheld, Daniels read aloud, Your assignment is Room 3, Bunk 2. The barracks area was a small square room, probably no bigger than a small office cubicle. The area had 6 doors. The one they had just come through, the latrines were straight ahead, and doors numbered 1 through 4, 2 on each side. Cooper saw the room labeled 3 on the right and proceeded to it. He used his key card to open the door. The door opened up to a bigger room, probably 3 times as big as the entrance area. Inside there were 3 sets of bunk beds. There was a small desk area off to one side and closets numbered 1 to 6 along the wall. There was also a door to the latrines that were shared by the other rooms. Cooper again used his key card and opened up the closet with number 2 on it. The door slid open, revealing a hanger area for uniforms, 3 dresser drawers, and a small charging area for his military handheld device. He put his bags down on the floor at the same time Daniels put his other bag on the floor as well. Daniels was looking around, admiring the room. It doesn't look like much has changed since I was a private. In fact, this looks like the same furniture I had when I was here about a year ago. Well, at least it isn't a huge bay of beds. Cooper nodded and agreed, remembering his time in the open barracks with his unit in basic training. At least he would only be leaving with 5 other soldiers. Well, Daniel said, this is where I leave you. Do you have any questions for me? Cooper had many, but didn't know where to start. Daniels, what time is work tomorrow? Bolts didn't say. Daniels responded, you should be at work by 0800 each day. We usually work until 1700 hours every day unless there is a rush job. Included in your supplies are your new uniforms for work, which are just the blue overalls, but they have your name and the Gemini patch on them. There are also some tool kits that were in your bag that you will use when you start going outside to fix ships. Tomorrow they will probably fit you for your space suit, and maybe you will even take a short spacewalk. But again, it all depends on what jobs the motor pool is working on now. Even though the motor pool looked busy, we are actually in a little bit of a lull when it comes to space work right now. But don't worry, it will pick up in the next few days as we have some bigger ships inbound right now. It is, Daniel looked at his handheld, 1750 right now, so you could head over to the chow line and then unpack, or work for a while and then go when it's less crowded. Tomorrow I will show you where the chow hall is in the motor pool. If I remember correctly, breakfast opens at 0600 hours here in the barracks area. Thanks, Daniels. What about PT? Well, you lucked out on that one. Our unit doesn't have official PT. Have you seen Bolts? Daniels said with a chuckle. You will get a workout just repairing ships on the outside every day. But if you're looking for some extra fitness, there is a gym a few doors down closer to the mess hall. I believe it's open 24 hours since so many people are on different shifts. This facility runs around the clock, but the motor pool generally opens during regular business hours. But there are many special projects you will work on in the off hours. You will learn more about that later. Is that it? If so, I'm off to have a nice dinner with my wife. Bolts let me go early today, so I might get some quality time with her before she is off to her night shift. My wife is a medical nurse in the infirmary. The sick never sleep. Cooper thought about it some more. He was ready to take a break and be alone for a while. He learned too much already, and he wanted to organize things and get unpacked. He would be at Gemini for at least 12 weeks, so he better get used to it. No, Daniels, I don't have any more questions. Thanks again for your help. I guess I will see you tomorrow at 0800 hours. They shook hands and Daniels left. Cooper looked around the room that he would live in for the next 3 months. It was surprisingly clean. He noticed some pictures hanging on one wall. It appeared as if his roommates be in the security division, as the pictures showed them standing in formation near an entrance to a terminal where he first arrived. His bunk was on the bottom, and he started digging into his bag for supplies. They issued him new sheets, a pillow, and blankets. The blanket, which was a darker blue than the one in basic training, had a logo in the center for the Gemini space station. Looking at one of the other bunks, he was able to match the location of the logo, which was in the top center of the bunk. As he was finishing, he heard the door open. It was one of the guys in the picture. Hey, you must be Cooper Richardson. My name is Josiah Griffin. Welcome to the can, as we call it. Cooper turned around and shook hands with Josiah. He reminded him a little bit of Childs, his friend from basic training. He was tall and lanky with a small tuft of black curly hair on his head. His face was all smiles. This is definitely someone who finds happiness in just about everything he does, Cooper thought. Great to meet you, Josiah. You can call me Cooper. I see you are getting moved in. Did you meet the infamous Bolts yet? Josiah said while taking off his guard jacket. He laid it on the side of his bed, which happened to be right across from Cooper's. Then he sat down on his bunk. Yes, just arrived, and Daniels took me to meet Bolts. How was the questioning? Did you flinch? I always felt like he would have made a great interrogator. The stories of his questioning new recruits are legendary. Well, Cooper started, sitting down in the bunk as well. "It wasn't too bad. I mean, he asked me if I was ready for this, but I am, so I just answered honestly." "Hmm. Sounds like he might have gone easy on you, knowing who your mother and grandfather are," Josiah said, crinkling his face in thought. "Hey, how do you know that?" Cooper said with surprise. "Oh, I haven't told you yet. I work for the internal security at Gemini. Mostly just keeping the peace when different ships arrive. You would be surprised how much racism still exists out here in the stars. It is sort of like some of these groups spend so much time alone out here they forget that racism and sexism should have ended a long time ago. But anyway, given my position here, I can check the backgrounds of any new recruits who arrive here at Gemini. And of course, since they assigned you to my room, I had to dig a little deeper. You come from quite the military royalty, that's for sure." Cooper wasn't sure how to respond. He still couldn't believe all that he had learned about his family in the past few months. There was a time in New Denver when he believed his dad worked at a burn pit all his life, and his mom died when he was young. He had no idea all that was kept from him for so many years. "Well, yeah, I guess they are pretty famous." "Hey, man, I'm sorry about your dad. Your file didn't list all the details, but it looks like he died recently in a tragic event." Josiah said this with genuine concern, and Cooper thought he might have found a friend. He was missing Childs and Alwine, even though he just saw them at graduation last week. "Thanks, Josiah. My life was pretty much turned upside down when I first met my grandfather Ryder. It has been a rough road, but I'm trying to move on from the past and look to the future," Cooper said, hoping to end the discussion and move on to a different one. But he made the mistake of mentioning Ryder. "Yeah, Major Ryder. What a trip that guy is. I met him once, and he was all business. There were a couple of perps hanging around the motor pool. We were getting ready to call them in for questioning when Ryder arrived with a team of high-end soldiers all in black gear. They took over our investigation and moved in quickly. They took the two characters down, and they were off the space station before Gemini News even got wind of it." Josiah leaned in close as if the walls had ears and whispered, "I heard a couple of the officers talking afterwards. It sounded like the two were EOA terrorists and they were plotting another attack on Gemini. I am not sure what happened to the two men. Ryder was on and off the ship in a matter of hours." "Wow, well, I have heard that Ryder moves fast. Yeah, he's all business. So is he like that in person?" Josiah asked with definite interest. Cooper thought about it. "Well, I haven't spent that much time with him, but he did have moments when he smiled and had fun. I remember when we were coming over from Earth, he was flipping pancakes in low gravity. He was laughing and having a good time." Josiah shook his head. "Well, that's pretty hard to imagine. From everything I have seen and read about him, he is not the type of person you ever want to cross." "Yeah, I can see that. When the bomb went off at the moon base, he changed and got serious in set." Cooper couldn't finish his sentence because Josiah cut him off. "Bomb at the moon base? You were there when that bomb destroyed the supply ship last week?" Cooper contemplated what to say next. Ryder showed him a lot of confidential material, but he was pretty sure the bomb was common knowledge and not top secret or anything. "Yes, we were actually at Crater's restaurant celebrating my basic training graduation when the bomb exploded. It looks like the supply ship isn't destroyed, but it will need some major repairs." "Wow," Josiah said. "That was some serious shit. So, how did Ryder act?" Looking up and remembering back, Cooper replied, "Well, we were eating dessert and having a great time, but when the explosion went off, Ryder was on his feet in a second with his phone to his ear and his gun in his hand, looking out the window. We left right away and headed right down to the situation. He took charge of the investigation and the interrogations." Josiah nodded. "That sounds like the guy that was here. Wow, I can't believe that guy is your grandfather. My parents worked in a cafeteria on the moon." Cooper's stomach started rumbling, and he unconsciously rubbed it in his hand. "Dude, was that your stomach? Man, we need to get you some chow," Josiah said, getting up from his bunk. "Don't worry about your stuff right now. You can put it away later. Let's go eat." It smelled like we might be having some pizza, but you never know. Some mystery meals can give off the odor of something good, but it turns out to be quite awful. Cooper got up from his seat. Josiah put his security jacket back on and followed Cooper out the door. They walked toward the chow hall, and Josiah was telling stories about some of the crazy meals he was served. "Man, this one time the shipment was late in arriving from the moon due to a solar flare storm. So they served us these little patties of meat that vaguely resembled rat meat. Cooper gave him a crazy look and a smile, wondering if Josiah was pulling his leg. Cooper kept going. I'm serious. You have to believe me. I, of course, had to try it, but couldn't get past the image of a dead rat on its back with its legs in the air. That was the day when I discovered the snack store down on the fourth level. It's open 24 hours. They have burgers and fries anytime you get hungry. A couple of extra credits, then it won't cost you on the moon, but worth a couple of extra credits more than it would cost you on the moon, but worth every one. They entered the mess hall and used the cards on the keypad. After the machine showed a green light, they proceeded through the maze of ropes. It looked like the line could hold hundreds of people at a time, but when they got to the front, there were only about 20 people in line in front of them. Josiah leaned over and said, I'm not sure if anyone told you, but it's better to come later for dinner. Most people try to be here when they open, thus the lines. Josiah gestured to the rope maze that went way back the way they came. I usually just try to wait until the last hour, but the only problem is sometimes the good food is already gone by then. Looking up at the menu, he exclaimed, Nice! Looks like my nose was right. Pizza tonight. The line lessened and they reached a bank of touchscreens. Josiah showed him how to scroll through the choices and pick his items. Then there was a slight vibration and the door slid open with a tray of food on it. The drink was in a small opening to the side. They grabbed the trays and headed out to the seating area, where they found an open table near the wall and sat down. It's crazy because we live in a room that can handle 6 soldiers, but with your arrival, we now only have 4 there. You probably won't see the other 2 for a while. They are out on a mission headed toward the asteroid belt. They just left a few weeks ago, and I don't expect they will return for at least a month. It's been lonely lately, so I'm glad you're here, Josiah said, biting into his pizza slice. Cooper nodded in agreement. It's great to meet you as well, and it's so nice to be in a small room again after the barracks and basic. Then he grabbed the pepperoni pizza slice and bit into it. Not bad, Cooper thought, but the best thing is that I won't be yelled at for taking too long to eat. After dinner, they dumped their trays in the recycling area and headed back out the way they came. Josiah led them back to the room, still chatting away about everything. Cooper was getting tired and having trouble focusing. He was getting nervous about starting training tomorrow, and he wanted to get everything ready. When they got back to the room, Josiah invited him to the rec room. It's right down the hallway. They have billiards, a game system, and other things to do. The best thing, there are female soldiers. I have been chatting up this sweet little redhead who works in the shipping and receiving area. Hey, she has a friend you might like, Josiah said, thinking about it. She's a little bit older than you, but we can make it work. Want to check it out for a little bit? Cooper didn't want to go to the rec room. He was already worried about the first day of training tomorrow, and then to be set up with a girl, probably not a good idea. However, he didn't want to ruin the start of this friendship, so he decided to make an excuse. He replied, Josiah, thanks so much for the invite. Right now, though, I really want to focus on getting my stuff unpacked and ready for the start of training tomorrow. But how about if we do it another time? Cooper lied a little, as it probably wouldn't take him too long to get unpacked, but he was worried about everything and just needed some time to be alone. Josiah nodded. Okay, Cooper, that makes sense. Well, sure, we'll do it another time. I'm going to get changed into my civvies and get out of here. Get out of your way. He grabbed his bag and some other clothes and headed to the latrine. Cooper heard the shower turn on and then some music playing. He could hear Josiah singing along, and it made him smile. What a great guy, Cooper thought. It looks like I got lucky with my roommate, and the barracks don't seem too bad. Then he dumped his bags on the bed and started looking through them. A little while later, he heard the water shut off and Josiah came out singing to the music. Cooper smiled again when he looked up and saw that Josiah was dressed in a flashy shirt with gold earrings hanging from his ears. He did a little spin move in the small space, and Cooper could tell he was wearing dancing shoes as well. Cooper noted a scent like cologne. He wasn't sure because he hadn't experienced much of that on Earth, but it did seem like what cologne would smell like. Last chance, Cooper. You want to go? Josiah said with a gleam in his eye and his broad grin. No, Josiah, you have fun tonight. I will join you another time. Okay, man, no worries. Don't wait up for me. If things go well, I might be staying all night with that little redhead. With that, he winked, did another spin move, and was out the door. Cooper sighed and remembered the woman he met earlier today, Specialist Johnson. I wonder if I will ever be able to talk confidently to women, Cooper thought. He rejected answering his own question and went back to folding his underwear.